Today we're going to talk about the number one most dangerous carb in the world, and it's not sugar, okay? Even by a long shot. This carbohydrate creates such a massive blood sugar spike, way more than sugar, but it's not even classified as a sugar. It's a carb, but it's not a sugar. It has the potential to create diabetes type 2 and a fatty liver and insulin resistance, which is the precursor to type 2 diabetes. In other words, it will mess with your blood sugar big time. It's going to create visceral fat. That's the fat around your organs. It will disrupt your good microbes and feed the pathogens, the bad guys in your gut. It is a super inflammatory carbohydrate. It'll create inflammation, not just in your joints, but especially in your gut. If you're ever concerned about the true bad cholesterol, the LDL small particles that can invade the inside of the arteries, this is one carb that will do it in a heartbeat. It's marketed as zero sugars. It only costs 20 cents per pound. So this is a bucket of it right here. This is 25 pounds, pretty heavy. This is $5, and that's because it's subsidized. That means the taxpayers actually end up fronting the money for it so they can get it at a fraction of the real cost. All right, what's the purpose of this carbohydrate? It has no health benefits. It's a filler. Okay, it adds bulk to a product. An average person consumes between 65 and 250 pounds of this stuff every single year. That comes out to 21 billion pounds of this carbohydrate produced every year. It's in a lot of the gluten-free foods. It's in baby formulas. It's in baked goods. A lot of athletes consume it. Can you now guess what this carb is? It is a starch, but not just any old starch, not the potatoes that your grandmother served you. We're talking about industrial starch, modified food starch, cornstarch, maltodextrin. All right, what is a starch? This is a starch right here. We have sugar over here. A starch is a string of sugar molecules on a chain. But when you modify it in the lab, you strip away all the armor. You now refine it and break it down to such a level that these bonds between the sugar become very, very weak and fragile. So when you consume it, it breaks down into sugar so fast, even more than glucose. So when I talk about industrial starch, I'm not talking about these potatoes or even the starch in vegetables. I'm talking about this powder right here. This powder that has been so highly refined. And what I mean by refined, it's mechanically ground down into small particles. They add bleach, but of course, if you consume this in a spoon, it would not be very pleasurable. It's not even that sweet unless you chewed it for a while, because if you chewed it, in fact, if you even took a piece of bread in your mouth, it wouldn't be sweet unless you chewed it a little bit and you broke down the bonds to release the sugar, and then it would be sweet. I'm going to run through very quickly just the chemicals that they use in this modification. You really need to know this. One chemical they use is called sodium trimetaphosphate. This has been linked to kidney stress and vascular calcification. It may worsen bone demineralization and accelerate aging process in arteries. Here's another one, vinyl acetate. Vinyl acetate is considered a possible human carcinogen. Here's another one, sodium hypochlorite. This is bleach. Bleach is interesting because they regulate bleach in the water supplies as a carcinogen, but they don't regulate it in the food starch. Overexposure is linked to kidney stress and damage to your enamel and mucosal tissues. And then they add this other chemical. This is widely used in infant formulas and beverages. It may disrupt mitochondrial function if consumed in excess. So here's the point. All of those chemicals I just mentioned are self-regulated under something called GRAS, which is generally recognized as safe. And so the question is, how can it actually be safe if it's not even tested for long-term studies? And so you don't have to really wonder why we have chronic disease. If we look at this, okay, we have 16 grams of total carbohydrate, we have 1 gram of fiber, and we have 0 grams of sugar. What is left? we have 15 grams of a carbohydrate that is not listed on this nutritional facts. And that is why starch is invisible. You don't see it unless you read the ingredients and understand that modified food starch, modified corn starch, wheat starch are all industrial starches. It's basically extra damaged protein that clogs everything up. It's directly responsible for the complications of diabetes and also the Alzheimer's plaquing in the brain and also the fibrosis or scar tissue in your liver. But there's one more thing I need to mention without giving you a lot of big words. This is the word right here, which is a byproduct of glucose from the starch. It's called an aldehyde. I don't know if you ever heard about this chemical, but this is what they use to embalm people, to preserve them. The other one is another chemical that I'm not going to give you the long name on. All you need to realize is that it's the toxin that occurs after you drink alcohol the day after when you have the hangover. But don't worry, it gets worse. If you take a look at junk food, right, what is it composed of? Sugar, starch, and seed oils, right? But when you combine the starch with the seed oil under heat, you create a compounded toxic soup that is deadly on your tissues. Very few people just consume starch by itself. They have it in different forms, like chips, right? Potato chips, which is mostly seed oil and refined industrial starch. And if you go in the snack aisle in the grocery store, you'll see all sorts of versions of these chips or crunchy things with basically seed oil and more starch. I mean, chips have like 65% starch, 30% oil. Then we get crackers. Here's the Cheez-Its, right? 70% starch, 25% seed oils. Then we have cereal, 80% starch. Sometimes they put seed oils, but mostly they add sugar to that. But there's usually always some seed oil involved. What have we got in bread? 75% starch, maybe some sugar, but definitely seed oils, 15%. Pasta has starch. We have 15% seed oils. French fries, 80% starch, 15% seed oils. So what's really bizarre to me is that so many of us have been focused on sugar for so many years, but the starch is actually consumed in way higher quantities, and actually it's more deadly. Now remember, I'm not just picking on starches. I'm not picking on this potato you get from the garden or vegetable starches. I'm picking on the industrial starches, like these mashed potatoes that have been highly processed. There's a big difference between you cooking this and you just adding water to this right here. But of course, some people say, I don't eat cornstarch. But then if you look in their pantry, they usually have some Pop-Tart or some other food that has modified cornstarch. But because they don't read the label, they don't know. And then they'll tell me, well, it's organic. But look at how much starch and seed oils that are in here. It's the same as non-organic. What's pretty wild is I was in the grocery store the other day and I bought these hot dogs. The third ingredient is modified food starch in hot dogs. Why? Because it's a filler to add bulk. So if we look at the definition of food, that which is eaten to sustain life, promote the growth and repair of tissues, does the ingredients in ultra-processed food calories, aka junk food, industrial starch, fit this definition? No, it does not fit the biological definition of the word food, and it shouldn't be called food, but it is because of various loopholes that is built into the legal definition of food, which is a completely different conversation. I'll do another video just on that so they can actually keep selling it and calling it food. The basic 3 ingredients for most junk food, ultra-processed foods: sugar, usually synthetic sugar, makes up 5 to 20% of that. Seed oils makes up 20 to 35% of that. And starches make up the majority. 55 to 75% of ultra-processed food calories are starches. And I created a really cool app for you to use to identify these 3 things. All you have to do is download the free app and then scan the barcode on any box of food, and it'll quickly represent these 3 things. So you can visually see how much of these are in the foods in your pantry, in your refrigerator, or at the grocery store. Unfortunately, 65% of the calories young children eat are ultra-processed foods. And 55 pounds of that is just industrial starch. When you get to teenagers, it's 70% of their calories are ultra-processed foods, and that's over 106 pounds of actual industrial starch. Now, these numbers are extremely conservative. It's probably a lot more, but it's just one reference that I found. Adults have 55% of their calories ultra-processed food and 67 pounds of industrial starch. I mean, it's mind-blowing that the great majority of our calories are ultra-processed food calories. Now, I really gave starches a black eye, okay? But the next most important thing you need to understand is the data about seed oils. And for that video you should watch, I put it up right here. Check it out right now.